and we're going to say multiply w-cw and then divided by CW. And I can't really explain to you exactly what that means. I just know that what this does is puts a piece of food anywhere in the canvas. Okay, so now for Y, pretty much the same thing. So we want a random position. Alright, that same thing that we did up here, except we're going to use HCW / CW. Alright, so that's what that'll do. It'll just create a piece of food for the snake to go after. So now we want to run the paint function, which is basically the main function to paint or draw the snake. Alright, so we're going to say function paint. Alright, and we're going to do some of what we did in the first video in this chapter, where we created the rectangles and the fill styles and things like that. Alright, so first let's paint the canvas. We'll do CTX dot fill style, and this should look really familiar. And I'm going to set it to black, and CTX dot fill rect. Okay, so we're going to say from the top corner, and we want it to span the entire width and height of the canvas, which we defined as W and H, and that was defined up here. Okay, so that's that, and let's give it a stroke. Now we did add the background and the border from within our CSS, but I want to do it from here as well. And come to think of it, we probably don't even need that in the CSS. So now we want to do a stroke style, and we'll set that to white, and stroke rect, and that's going to be the same thing, 0 WH. Alright, so that paints the canvas for us. Alright, so this is where we're going to do the logic for the movement of the snake. And basically, when you hit a piece of food, it's going to pop out the tail cell and place it in front of the head cell. Alright, so we're going to create a couple variables here. NX is going to be equal to snake array. Remember, we created the snake array. First element dot x, and let me just copy this, and then we're going to have ny, and we just change this here to y. So these are just variables on the current position of the snake. Alright, so now let's create the proper direction movement. Alright, so we're going to say if direction is equal to right, then we're just going to increment the nx variable. So nx plus plus. Alright, and then we're going to say else if D is equal to left. Okay, then we're going to decrement nx. Do the same thing for up and down. So if D is equal to up. Then we're going to say ny minus minus. Actually, semicolon should be on the end of these. And finally, else if d is equal to down, then we want to say ny plus plus. Alright, so that takes care of the direction of the snake. Now what I'm going to do is paste in an if statement that's going to check for a collision. Alright, so it's going to check to see if the snake runs into the sides or into itself. Okay, so while still in the paint function, I'm going to paste this in. It's basically it's a calculation to tell if the box has, like I said, hit the side or hit its body. And what we want to happen is when it does that, we want the game to stop, and then we want the overlay. We want this to show with the score, and then we can click to play again. But for now, I'm just going to have it restart the game. And to do that, we just want to say init. Okay, we'll do the other stuff after. And then we just simply want to return from the function. Alright, so if you hit the sides, the game will just reset for now. Alright, so now what we want to do is we need to write the logic for the snake to eat the food. And basically, like I said, the logic behind it is when it eats the food, a new head position matches with the food. Alright, so basically the food becomes the head, and it creates a new head instead of moving the tail. Alright, so I'm going to do some more calculations in here. We'll say if nx is equal to food dot x. Alright, so this food variable is coming from up here. We initialize the variable. Alright, so if food x, and we're going to say and ny is equal to food y. Okay, so the x and y positions of the so basically if the snake replaces the food position. Alright, and if it does that, we'll set a variable for the tail. Okay, so we'll say variable tail is equal to let's see, we'll say x, and then we'll put the nx position, and then y will be the ny position. Okay, so that'll be the tail. Now when the snake hits the food, we want the score to go up 1. Okay, so we just need to say score plus plus, and that'll increment the score by 1. You could easily make, say, if the snake eats the food, 5 points or 10 points. You could do that as well, but we're just going to do it by 1. And then let's see, we want to create the new piece of food. Okay, so create food, and to do that, we're just going to run our create food function. Alright, so we've already written that right here. It's just going to create a new piece of food in a random position. Alright, so that's that. So let's say else. Alright, so basically if these positions are not where the food is, then we'll set variable tail, and we're going to say snake array snake array dot pop. Okay, so we're just going to pop out the last cell and put it onto the head, and then say tail dot x equals nx, and then tail dot y is going to equal ny. And then finally we want to do an array unshift down here. So snake array snake array dot unshift, and we're going to put in the tail as the parameter. Now to create the rest of the squares inside of the snake, we're going to create a for loop. All right, so for, and inside the for loop, we're going to say variable I is equal to 0, and as long as I is less than the snake array length, we're going to increment I by 1. Alright, and for each iteration, we're going to call the paint cell function. Alright, so first we want a variable, we'll call it C, and that's just going to equal the current cell, so snake array, and then inside here we're just going to put in that I variable, and then we're simply going to call paint cell, and we're going to pass in c.x and c.y positions. And we haven't created this paint cell function yet. We'll do that in a minute. Alright, so under this we're going to say paint cell, and we're going to pass in food.x and food.y. Alright, so now the snake can eat the food, and the snake will grow when it eats the piece of food. Alright, so now we want to deal with the score. So I'm going to create we will create a function called check score, and I'm going to run that here, and we'll create it in a couple minutes. Okay, so we're going to say check score and pass in the score variable. And what check score is going to do is it's going to do a couple things. It's going to take our current score from the current game, and it's going to run it against, it's going to show it to us, and then it's going to run it against the high score, which is going to be stored through local storage, HTML5 local storage. And if the score is higher than the high score, then it will replace the high score. Alright, so that's what this function will do. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to run the paint, we want to create the paint cell function, and that's going to actually paint our squares or our rectangles in the snake. Alright, so actually our curly braces got a little messed up somehow. This document ready parentheses should be at the bottom here, so let's put that in. So we'll have a parenthesis, curly braces, parentheses, and a semicolon. Alright, so I'm actually just going to save this and take a look at it. It's not going to do anything right now, but I want to just check the console for errors. Alright, so it says unexpected token on line 75. Snake array pop. Oh, this should be parentheses, not brackets. Alright, try again. Check collision is not defined. That's okay. We haven't created it yet, and that's going to run when the snake hits a wall or hits itself. Okay, and we actually are going to run it right here. We just haven't created it. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create this paint cell function. Alright, so function paint cell, and it's going to take an x and y variable or parameter. Alright, and we're going to do something that we've already done. Okay, we're going to do the fill style. We're going to take the ctx variable and give it a fill style, and let's set it to green. Actually, you know what? Let's make that a variable. If we go back up here, let's let's create a variable called color, and this will just give us a place to, we'll make the default green, and just a place to easily customize the game a little bit. Color, speed. Okay, and then down here, instead of green, we're just gonna put in color. Alright, so that'll fill the snake rectangles. Okay, and then we want to actually draw it, so CTX fill rect. Alright, and in here we're going to basically just, it's going to be dynamic because it's going to be moving, so we want to use our X and Y variables. Okay, so we want to say X times CW. Alright, and CW is basically the cell width. We have it up here as 15. Okay, so that's just basically the size of the snake, of the snake rectangles. So X times CW, and then the next one will be Y CW, and then we're just going to have CW CW. Alright, so basically we know what this does and what it takes. It takes the width, the height, and the position, the X position, the Y position, and then the width and the height. Okay, so width and height is going to be 15, and the position will be dynamic because it will be moving. Okay, so that's the rectile. Why do I keep saying rectangle. And now what we want to do is we're going to put a little border around it. So we'll say stroke style, and we'll set that to white, just so we can tell which where the rectangles begin and end. And of course we need to do stroke rect. Alright, and that's going to take the same parameters as the fill rect. And that's it. That's it for the paint cell function. Okay, so pretty easy. The next thing I want to do is create the check collision function. So check collision, and this is going to take in X, Y, and then array. And this is going to be a for loop. So variable I equals 0, and we're going to say as long as I is less than the array length, then we're going to increment I by 1. Okay, and then inside here we want to have an if statement. We're going to say if array I dot x is equal to x, and array I dot y is equal to y, then we're going to just return true. Alright, and then down here after the for, if we don't return true, we want to return false. Alright, so basically that's going to just check and see if it collides with either the edge of the game or the snake itself. And I actually made a little mistake here. This shouldn't be a comma, this should be a semicolon. Alright, so let's check that. Alright, still saying check collision is not defined. And that's because we named it wrong. We want underscore collision. Alright, so now you can see that we have our snake and our food, and when it hits the side it's just restarting the game and the food is in a random spot. Now I can't move this yet. If I click my arrows, the snake doesn't move, so we need to do that. So that's basically just going to be a keyboard controller function. And we also want to hide this. Alright, so we want to just go to the CSS, and I think we already said display none. Yeah, we just have it commented out. So let's get rid of that, these comment characters, and then we reload, and our game is getting there. But this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to stop it here, and then we'll finish the rest of the script in the next video.